grow your business, if you want to make more money in business, it can be useful to listen to people who are earning more and making more than you in business. But many of these people, they'll give you advice about work-life balance and how that's very important. And this applies whether you are a marketer at a more established company or an entrepreneur who is just starting up especially. The reason, though, why this advice, which I think, to paraphrase Mark Twain, I think he once said that the best thing to do with advice is to pass it on to someone else. But in this case, I think the best thing to do is to be careful about who you're listening to, because the problem with listening to people who are ahead of you, especially in the context we're talking about in business, like if you listen to Warren Buffett in past years or Bill Gates. I remember once when I was in college, I was 19, I was in this one credit class where all these alumni would come back and tell their life story of how they made their millions or even billions. And yeah, the work-life balance question came up a lot. It kind of annoyed me at the time. I didn't really understand why. I was like, this question is so stupid. And it wasn't until later that I figured out why. It's because when you are working on something, especially a startup, where there are many plates that have to be spinning all at once. You have to get multiple departments and even, build your core team and then multiple teams underneath that foundation. Work-life balance, what are you talking about? Like, you're in the wrong line of work. You, at a minimum, I think you have to be putting in a solid, full 8+ hours a day. Because if you don't already have that experience, like if you're younger and like you haven't worked for another startup already, where maybe you did have work-life balance, you got to get up that learning curve. Because even if you did, there's so much that you didn't experience, because now everything is your responsibility and everything is your fault that goes well as what doesn't. Listening to successful people give you advice about work-life balance, you have to be very skeptical about it, because that is not how they ramped up to where they are at today. And what we are told is that obsession, it's a dirty word. Obsession is something bad. This is the prevailing wisdom of friends and family. And if you have a mentor, a lot of people are more obsessed with having a mentor than actually obsessed with growing their business, which is stupid. Don't do that. Many of the most successful people that are quoted, and you see the clips of them floating around YouTube, telling their stories, telling their insights, a lot of them didn't have mentors. No one mentored Steve Jobs. Be a mentor to yourself. Get a journal, talk with your team, talk with your customers above all. Let the market itself mentor you. That is probably the best mentor that you can find. Let the market be your mentor. In the same way that for some people, sales can be a dirty word. Oh, you work in sales? Oh, used car salesman vibe. Obsession has a little bit of a similar tinge to it. We'll talk more about sales probably another day in terms of its strategic importance and tactically how to think about it, how to apply it, how it fits into the bigger picture of everything. There's often a conflict, almost like a yin and yang type of conflict between product and sales, I find. It's like, which do you focus on, when and how much? And it shifts over time, but we'll talk about that more another day. If you would like me to bump up that video as a priority, please leave a comment below. But obsession, we're told it is a dirty word. For many, what a normal person in today's world would call obsession, you might actually call drive, and I would call, ideally, play. It's a combination of both, drive and play. This is ideally what great obsession is, because it's like the work itself is what is motivating you. Just like we talked about in the previous video, find the fire, make the work your reward. Go check out that video if you're interested. It's a good one. Because the work itself, if you really like it, if you find the challenge energizing, you're going to have a nearly limitless well of energy to wake up each day excited and get right to work on doing. But you'll also find that you'll be thinking about it constantly, because you're going to want to solve, you're going to get obsessed with progress. Another step, another step, another step. You'll be thinking about it when you wash the dishes or you're in the shower, just doing little random maintenance chores that we have to do to maintain our homes or our lives. You'll be thinking about it. I would say from experience, from someone who is obsessed with his work, I love the work that we're doing right now. I love working with my team. I feel like I'm more and more personally in my zone of genius working with my team to build the Grobo platform. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And it's just really cool. I love our brand. I love our team. I love the challenge. And I just feel grateful. And I want to think about this nonstop, and I am. I do find that it is useful, though, sometimes to just curtail some of those thoughts because you don't want to be driven purely by thought. I think as it can be comforting or comfortable to want to get into a very analytical mindset or more of like an obsessive problem-solving thought loop where, okay, you always think there's something you're missing. It's like, oh, you just solved the problem, but let's get it more and more perfect, more and more perfect. Not to discount some of what I'm working on. There is some truth, though, in right now where I'm at. I took a lot of action for a year and a half building a project that is some of my personal theories on AI, which I can talk more about in the future if you're interested. Building AI from scratch. The Grobo platform today is built on a variety of proprietary AI models, third party, but we're curious about building our own, and that's also what I've been working on, and that's what I've thought a lot about in addition to the platform itself. Now, for that, maybe it makes more sense for me to be more strategic and cerebral and think a lot in advance because there are fundamental assumptions that I need to sort of really unpack because I burned myself out. I was working so hard. I was so obsessed for a year and a half, and I had to take a break. Part of that was due to some personal things as well, but I am in the process of getting back to that work in addition to the core Grobo platform because the two are going to be synthesized and together in the near future. We want to build our own AI model. But don't let the thoughts alone drive you. You have to marry it with action. While I was, for example, for that year and a half, I made a ton of progress. I learned, I proved certain assumptions and theories, but I took a ton of action. And my work engine, you could say, was I would wake up each day and I would just code for 2 to 3 hours, and then I'd take a break, go eat something, walk around, do some exercise. And depending on the day of the week and what priorities were, I might, on a Saturday, for example, I would spend sometimes 16 hours on a Saturday just back to back, just code, put in another hour, get another item off the list. So I was taking plenty of action at the same time, but it can be easy to fall into a trap of perfectionism and just wanting to make it perfect in your head first. Be careful on that because sometimes, just like how work can be the reward, you could find the fire in doing your work, you will find certain answers just by making progress and taking it as far as you can take it. And I took it really far, and I'm about to take it a little bit further in this next iteration. So just to elaborate on that, if you're solving problems while you're washing the dishes or in the shower, this is productive. And it can also be useful, though, to disconnect sometimes because as I read in this book, I finished this book called Rest, R-E-S-T, recently. It's all about the benefits of rest, how you do rest deliberately, backed up by a lot of stories of famous people like Charles Darwin. And he would wake up at around, I think it was 6 or 7 a.m., work for just 4 hours a day. That was a pattern, just 4 intense, concentrated hours of work, solitary. And then the rest of the day would be opening letters, maybe some light work, going for a walk, enjoying the day. It's interesting, right? But why, in my experience, have I found the disconnect to be useful? Well, your subconscious is working on problems. And I think it's very useful to keep a journal also for this reason, because you can get your thinking on paper up to a certain point, and you can go back, and it's much easier than just trying to go back in your own head. But when you take a break and you distract yourself with something light, a walk, a video game, a conversation, going out with friends, a movie, a show, sleeping, your brain will then make certain connections that you may not have otherwise been able to make if you were just using your conscious, i.e. analytical brain to try to logic your way to a creative solution. Creativity is random sometimes. And you have probably noticed this in your own work. Just you'll be walking down the stairs, or you'll be doing something like, you hear stories in history about this all the time. Not thinking of a famous one that comes to mind in history, but in cinema, but it's related to real life too. This is just how it happens. When Doc Brown in Back to the Future, classic, is figuring out how to build the DeLorean time machine, he gets his idea when one night he actually hits his head, I believe it was in the bathroom, and then he sits up and is like an aha moment. And he draws the flux capacitor, which makes the whole time travel concept with the DeLorean possible. Obviously, that's science fiction, but it's something for you to remember in your own work. Sometimes disconnecting can be very useful. You can make those key connections. And that's when unexpected solutions come. So how can you do this in a more deliberate way to sort of try to trigger this? Because it's kind of like a push-pull, I find. It's not always like a pure science. You can't just like, okay, and it's going to come. You can learn it a little bit like a skill, I find, where maybe you talk to yourself a little bit before sleep or when you're just waking up, because the distance between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, your conscious mind is still kind of there, and it's just easy. I find like I found some certain realizations right when I'm waking up or right when I'm going to sleep. Just certain more creative ideas come, and this is backed by psychology and tested science as well, that as you're going to sleep late at night and as you're waking up early in the morning, like you're just naturally more creative, like more connections can come. Part of the reason I record these videos also earlier. You want to consider also tactically write down a question. We did an experiment in AP Psych class, I remember back in high school years and years ago. And there was this, relatively simple in general terms problem, but it was a problem that you wouldn't be able to really necessarily know immediately. You would write it down and try to reason your way through it before sleep. You go to sleep, and then when you wake up, you'll have the answer. Like most people would have the answer, and it worked for me. So try that as a tactic too, and it's like you're working while you're sleeping, which is great because you're just resting, assuming you're doing sleeping right? Eyes closed, you're asleep, you're dreaming. But your subconscious really will do work for you. So leverage it. A potentially bad way is like when you are resting, like your mind is still wandering, like try to really disconnect. But again, when you wake up, your mind is a little bit looser and you're more likely to think of something new. Don't try to force it too much either. Just be like, okay, it's delegated to my subconscious. It's delegated to my conscious mind. And go and do some maintenance tasks, do another task, and you come back to your work, it's, that's the solution. You just weren't able to make the connection before, but your brain was working on it. So don't try too hard to force it, especially with your conscious mind if the solution just isn't coming. Solution is partly how you also, obsession, while it gets a dirty rap, it is largely how you get your hours up, because it feels like drive and play at the same time, and you need to get that experience in many times just to learn, to get up that learning curve. Just remember, it's not just about the thought, it's also about quality and quantitative action. And there is some truth in the phrase, measure twice, cut once, but it depends on circumstances in the market too. It'd be measuring a lot and cutting a lot. Be more obsessed with taking action, solving problems. Don't worry so much about having a mentor. I think part of having mentors is just kind of like a status game anyway. Let the market be your mentor as you take continuous, obsessive actions. And don't let anyone convince you otherwise that obsession is a bad thing. Because if you want to succeed at any level, there is a learning curve that you need to get up first. Let me know what you thought of this video. If you'd like to learn more about Grobo and how Grobo is creating an AI agents growth automation platform for business, go check us out at grobo.com. We're launching right now. It is so valuable. It is awesome. I'm really excited, and the team is really excited for us to share it with you. By the way, if you found value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you like it, subscribe it so you can continue to get more value, and give me your ideas, give me your questions, and I'll consider making videos about them as well. Okay, so like, subscribe, and please consider sharing it with someone who you think may also find it valuable. Thank you.